Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1Mby1M Strategy Roundtable for Entrepreneurs. 1Mby1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator in the world. Our mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue. And in support of that mission, we do a lot of mentoring, online mentoring. These free mentoring sessions happen every week, and they've been happening every week since the fall of 2008 when we first started experimenting with this. This is the 486th session of our free mentoring sessions. Every single recording of these sessions are available on our YouTube channel, 1M1M Roundtables. If you're following us on Twitter, and if you want to live tweet today, use hashtag 1M1M. Our Twitter channels are at 1Mby1M and at Romana. We publish a lot of interesting content through that. These are the call-in instructions. This is a roundtable, not a broadcast. So it's something that we want you to participate in and weigh in and so on and so forth, ask questions. So please make a note. I'll put the slide up later. We have to schedule programming first, and then we'll go to Q&A. We will start today's session with a conversation with Tony Olivito from Comeback Capital. Tony, welcome to the show. Good to have you. You're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute, sorry.
Now you're good. Go on.
Okay, how about now?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. Glad to be on the show. I'm excited. I'm excited because I think it'll be a good conversation. There's a lot of similarities between, the advice, the guidance that you give entrepreneurs and the way that we invest. So thank you for having me.
Great. Let's get acquainted. So tell us a bit about your background as well as about Comeback Capital. What are you trying to do with Comeback Capital?
Sure. Thanks. So background, I started off in corporate M&A for a couple of years, and that's where I learned about valuations and acquisitions and mergers. And then I spent a lot of years essentially as an operator working for a large private company, one of the largest in the country, worked in various different roles, supply chain analytics, finance, strategy, and then about 6 years ago, I started a microfluidic chip manufacturer with a friend of mine. So got into the entrepreneur world, and also around that same time started investing as an angel. Pretty actively. Fast forward to about a year and a half ago, and formed the Comeback Capital Fund with a different partner. And the name Comeback Capital is derived from a bus tour that was started by Ro Kahana, who's a representative from California, Tim Ryan from Ohio, and a bunch of venture capitalists from Silicon Valley who put together these bus tours of the Midwest, going to cities like South Bend and Detroit and Cleveland, Indianapolis, and they liked what they saw. It was kind of like their first foray into understanding the ecosystem here in the Midwest, and. Yep. And they liked what we were proposing and what we were doing individually, and supported the formation of Comeback Capital. So.
And what is the size of the fund?
So we're a startup in a sense, right? This is our first fund, and it's $2.25 million. And to date, we've invested in 16 companies. So 16 companies in about 18 months. So pre-COVID, we were on a pace of about making one investment per month. We expect we'll probably make another 10 investments. Our check size is typically 100,000, but earlier stage company might be as low as 50,000.
Okay. And what do you want to see in your companies before you invest?
Yeah, so in terms of the stage of companies, so we invest in pre-seed and seed stage companies. So these are companies so at the earliest stage, pre-seed, typically, almost always, they're post-revenue. There's some form of traction, whether that would be, say, 5, 10,000 of MRR, paid pilots. So that's like on the earliest stage, right? So post revenue is important, because before that, right? If it's pre-revenue, that's where like the accelerators tend to do a good job, or there still needs to be. It's in the entrepreneur's best interest to continue to bootstrap to get to that point, right? Of a couple $1,000s in MRR, because it just makes capital raising a little bit easier. It's never easy, right? But it makes it a little bit easier, right? If they're post-revenue. In addition to that, we typically like small rounds, right? So we've invested in quite a few rounds that are as low as like anywhere from like 250 to 500,000, right? That's typically at the pre-seed. We will invest in larger rounds, like as high as 2 million, right? So that's our range. Anywhere, round size anywhere from 250 to 500, because again, we're covering pre-seed and seed stage. Capital efficient. Do you lead rounds? Pardon me? Oh, do we lead rounds? So on a small pre-seed round, we would lead, yes. Obviously, on a larger, like on a seed round, depends on how large the round is, right? If it's a $2 million round, we probably wouldn't lead that, but if it's a seed round of only 750, that's something we could lead, right? Given our, like our check size is 100,000, but then our LPs, who are partners at other VCs, have the opportunity to sidecar, right? So as a group, Comeback Capital could provide, $400,000 or $500,000 in a round.
Okay. So talk a bit about sector. I heard you say MRR a few times. So does that mean that you're doing B2B SaaS primarily? What's your sector focus?
Right. Yeah, so it's primarily B2B. We do have a couple of companies that are, it's technology or tech-enabled services, right? So yes, we have a lot of companies in the portfolio that are, B2B software. We also have a couple, about 3, that are selling to consumers. And so those are transactional. But I'd say we weigh more towards the, B2B software. But we do look at both. I was using MRR as just something that people would recognize, and to point out that, it has to be post-revenue. Obviously, like we invested in a company called Zana Workwear. It's workwear for women in STEM and manufacturing, right? So that's a transactional business. They're selling boots and other types of clothing. And so the model there, the valuation metrics for that type of business is going to be different than a software, right? Okay.
So let's talk about geography. You talked about this bus tour being the catalyst for founding this firm. Talk about what is your philosophy on location, geography, etc.
Yeah, so geography for us is the Midwest. And, so it started because we saw opportunity that there was a lack of capital in the Midwest. And, specifically in areas outside of big cities, like Chicago, right? There's a lot of capital in Chicago for stage. But if you look at our portfolio and where we've invested, right? We've invested in Milwaukee, right, which is not on a lot of people's radar screen. We've invested in companies in Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, Minneapolis, although Minneapolis, right, there's capital up there, but it's never really mentioned, right, in, when people are talking about the Midwest, focus tends to be Chicago because it's a large city, right? So Ohio, Cleveland, for example, right, we invested in a couple of companies in Cleveland, right? So these are places, so it's all Midwest, and obviously it's because we were here in the Midwest, we understand the market, that's where our networks are, but specifically, right, it tends to be in kind of the smaller markets in the Midwest. We're not opposed to.
Where are you based?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I have 3 other partners. I'm based here in Chicago. I have a partner in Cleveland, another one in Pittsburgh, and another one in the Detroit, Flint area.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we invested.
Let's go to some case studies, some companies that you have invested in, feel for what they're doing, and especially when they came to you, what did they have and what did you see in them that really compelled you to write those checks? And I'm actually very interested in some of these off-center geographies where you have activities. So take 6 cases from these off-center geographies.
Yeah, so what did they have when they came to us? Typically they hadn't raised a lot of capital prior to us investing, and so that's important for us. If the company's already raised a decent amount of capital, then it wouldn't be a fit for us. It might be a fit for another venture firm, but it wouldn't fit for us, just given our thesis and where we want to invest. The team, right? So something interesting about the team, some proof points that they're able to execute, right? Because when you're looking at this early stage, there's just not a lot of data, right? I mean, we collect as much data as we can, right? But then you have to augment that with, we need to find some information to help us predict whether this team or these 2 founders, typically, right, 2 founders, can execute and can sell, right? So we've seen that they've built this technology, right? But how successful are they in having conversations with customers, right? Because the next stage, right, if we invest in them, typically that money is used to build sales and to grow, right? So the backgrounds of the founders, right? What their experience is in the industry that they're trying to sell into, right? Is important for us. So those are some of the things those are some of the key things that we look for. Capital efficient business models. We're not looking for unicorns, right? That's for other people.
That was going to be a next question that I would ask you. So let's go. Since you already have segued into that, tell me about what is your philosophy. You're not looking for unicorns. You're looking for early exits. Yeah,
exactly. So, my partner has this good example, right, that we use quite frequently. So if you're a founder, right, would you rather have 40% of a $100 million company or 4% of a $1 billion company, right? They're both equal, right? You end up with $40 million, right? But the probability that you actually reach $1 billion, right, is less than 1%. So your probability of getting $40 million if you're trying to build a unicorn company, right, is much, much lower, right? So, and if you look at where the exits are, right, the bulk of the exits are under actually between 30 and 50 million, right?
50 million.
Yeah.
Bulk of the exits are under 50 million.
Right. So, and we're trying to build a portfolio. We're looking for the companies that we think can build something that could exit, has a good probability of exiting in that range, right? If they go on to build bigger companies, right? That's great. But if you look at our portfolio, we might maybe have like one or two, we'll have one or two companies that are kind of like on that track, but it's not like we're explicitly looking for those types of companies. Whereas I think other investors, there might be other investors out there, other VCs that specifically do look for those types of investments.
Right. So just a couple of questions, follow-up questions on that. Are there, what is the size of exit that you are aiming for? Is it sub 50 million, 50 to 100 million? Where do you, what is the mathematics of your fund?
Yeah, so our fund, I guess, we're happy with more like what we say singles and doubles, right? So our portfolio, we're happy if we're able to identify a lot of companies that have successful exits, successful positive exits, right? So I guess we don't need a lot of large exits if we've invested in companies that have, 3x or 10x or 7x, right? So, so for us, again, like even a $15 or $20 million exit would be great if the company was capital efficient in getting there, right? If they only raised $1 million or $2 million, right, and they exited at $20 or $30 million, like that could potentially be right.
Perfectly fine situation.
Yeah. And the nice thing about that is that entrepreneurs would in that instance that we just described, an entrepreneur would end up with most of that exit, right? As opposed to if raised a lot of money, right? If they had a big round, if they raised $5 million and exited at, let's say, $30 million, most likely they diluted themselves along the way, right? So, So capital efficiency is important.
Yeah, our philosophy is bootstrap first, raise money later, or not at all. So you can, bootstrap, even if it's bootstrapping with a small amount of capital, sub $1 million capital, and you can get to an early exit. That's considered a perfectly fine outcome, which is what you're echoing here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk about a couple of examples from your portfolio that you think are good representations of the kind of companies you like to invest in? Yeah,
so good examples would be, there's some diversity in the types of companies we invest in. Generally, if you look at the industries, from an industry or vertical perspective, it makes sense that they're in the Midwest or connected to the Midwest, right? Because they're happen to be in like logistics or supply chain, fintech. There's some fintech in the Midwest. Specifically for specific examples, there's a company called Exit 7C, which is the first investment we made. That's based up in Milwaukee, and they broadly are company that does maintenance for fleets and different types of maintenance. It could be mobile fuel delivery, mobile car wash, tire repair, fleet maintenance repair. Commonality there is they do it remotely, and there's some technology that makes them efficient in doing that. Another company, let's see, Honcho. Honcho is a company that has created software for enterprises to monitor communications, and that's pretty important. Like today, as more and more companies are going remote, or they had to go remote. A lot of companies had to go remote, right, as a result of COVID. And so they have, where in industries where compliance is important, like in financial industry, right, where information could be shared. insider information or things that would tarnish a brand. They have this technology to ensure that employees are communicating in a way that's consistent with policy and don't put their careers and the company's brand in danger. You know, there's a whole variety, right? So that's more of an enterprise product. Ziptility is more of a SaaS for small utilities in the water industry, workflow management, some GIS capabilities. And then, yeah, so those are just a couple. And so we're not married to any one type of model, let's say.
Okay. Tony, I have a question about the activity level in the Midwest right now. If you look at these pockets like a Milwaukee or a Minneapolis, Ohio, Iowa, what kind of volume are we seeing? How many startups are operating in these kinds of geographies?
Yeah, so you know, the fact that we were investing pre-COVID at one company per month, right, indicates that there was decent activity. We looked at we're looking at essentially 100 companies per month.
Okay.
And yeah, so we're looking at 100 companies per month. We invest roughly in one, right? So it's like 1% of what we look at, we invest in. And so, you know, in those cities you mentioned, right, they're building ecosystems. They're connecting universities to the startup scene. They're trying to connect angel investors and create, you know, micro VC funds, like governments are trying to sponsor and support micro VC funds in some of those states. So there's more activity throughout the Midwest. There's accelerators that are specific to industries in that state. You know, for example, like Iowa and Nebraska have, as you would expect, agriculture-related accelerators. And Iowa is a big place for insurance, right? And so they actually have the Global Insurance Accelerator out in Des Moines, right? So in a lot of these cities, they're focusing on what they're good at, right? And that's probably because there's a concentration of a certain type of company in certain industries in those cities, right? And that's a natural place to start, right? To build an ecosystem. So yeah. So I mean, there is again, there is activity.
And the 100 deals a month that you are reviewing, what percentage do you think is part of the total deal flow, you know, total startup pool in that general area?
So I mean, we do eliminate some because they're out of region, but I would say that, I mean, I'd say probably about 85%, 90% of those that we see are in region.
No, that was not my question. My question is, if you look at the entire pool of deals in your region, 100 deals a month is what percentage of that total deal flow?
So 100 deals a month in terms of like overall in the country, or are you thinking?
No, overall in the region that you are working in. So are there like 1,000 deals a month in that? I mean, what is the total pool of startups operating in your region?
Sorry. Yeah. So I guess how many deals are we missing, right? So I mean, if we're if that's like 1,200 opportunities a year, Midwest, there's probably a couple thousand, so that's pretty good coverage, right?
So there are a couple of thousand deals across all of these states. There are only a couple of thousand startups?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, wow. That's interesting, actually. I would have guessed that the number has gotten higher than that, but that's very interesting input. Yeah.
So I mean, again, we're you know, those deals that we're looking at, right, are coming from accelerators. Some are from universities. Some are from other co-investors, right? And yeah, so I believe that in the Midwest, there's probably a couple thousand. I haven't gone back, and then so that's actually an interesting question, something I should delve into, but I don't think it's probably more than you know, a couple thousand. I guess so from a national number, right? I haven't seen numbers that focus specifically on, you know, technology company startups, right? Is it tens of thousands? I think 100,000 or so, right? And obviously most of it.
The national number is closer to 100,000.
Yeah, yeah. And so, right, and I've seen some numbers that like what, 80% of that goes to 2 states, right? So that would mean that 20,000 is spread across the rest of the country, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. California takes bulk of it. Interesting. Tony, I'm so happy to hear about your activities. You know, as you can tell, our philosophy is, you know, developing the ecosystem in a distributed fashion and really supporting a global startup ecosystem. So it's very important for players like yourself and your colleagues in the Midwest and other places to do their part in that effort, and that's how really a global ecosystem comes together. So it's terrific that you're doing what you're doing.
Right. Well, and I think it's important too that there's more people, more entities, more supporters that are focusing outside of those, you know, 2 states that we just mentioned, right? California and New York, right? Because you know, there's great entrepreneurs everywhere, right? And and you can build a company anywhere, right? And so it's the focus on like how do you build a company? What does it really take, right? And now with technology, right? You really don't need to be in California because you have access to a lot of the tools, right? Developers.
Absolutely.
And so the focus
we've always been of the opinion that you don't need to be in California. In fact, you can't really support the cost structure of a place like Silicon Valley if you're a startup. It's just not viable to build very early stage startups with Silicon Valley cost structure.
So I think the focus shifts to how do you you know, what problem are you solving, right? What niche are you going after? And it's really more about the product and why you have some type of advantage, competitive advantage, right? And are you able to, how well are you able to sell into that niche, right? What basis do you have, right? How, you know, what experience do you have?
You know, one thing, we're going to move on to the entrepreneur pitches in a minute. I just want to ask you for one thing. The companies that you're rejecting, you know, not investing in, if they are looking for help, send them our way and we will, you know, do our best to help them, because this is something we are very equipped to do, is figuring out why a company is failing to raise capital and what are the options of how to put one foot before the other and not go out of business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And potentially come back into a fundraising round after plugging those gaps. This is a very common scenario that we deal with.
We'll definitely talk more after this. Appreciate it.
Great. All right, you're staying for a bit, right, for the pitches?
Yes.
Very good. All right, folks, we are going to switch to the entrepreneur pitch session. I want to set some expectations. We are on your side. This is a safe working session. Whatever it is that I tell you or Tony tells you is based on our experience and our, you know, opinions. You can certainly disagree with us, and that's fine. You it's your venture, it's your prerogative to do whatever it is that you want to do with it. But what we're saying is based on experience, so do consider the feedback and strategize. You know, we're big believers here in strategy. Good strategy is very, very important, especially when you are trying to conserve resources and extend runways, which every one of you must be doing right now because of this entire COVID situation. We are going to be in a tight market for a long time now, probably 18 months, so you better conserve your runway as much as possible. Remember, another important point, do not blindly chase capital. not all businesses can raise money, not all businesses should raise money, and raising money doesn't guarantee success. You're generally better off bootstrapping to validation, and as Tony is saying, in his firm and in a lot of firms, his firm is representative of a trend. A lot of firms invest only after you've gotten to some revenue so that they see that you can execute. So that's been our philosophy all through, is that do as much as possible in a bootstrap mode, and then we will take you out for financing and fundraising. Okay, our first presenter today is Keith Heaney from Lincroft, New Jersey. Keith, please unmute your line and tell us what you're doing.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Keith Heaney, and I am the founder and CEO of DraftMate. It's a company that I have been actually thinking about for a couple of years now and never really put a pen to paper to draw up and everything. So I thought of this idea back when I was in college. I was a Division I football player, and I was always interested in dating the other female athletes. And upon graduation, there really was no way of finding out really who was into sports, who played sports and whatnot. So it was kind of in this limbo era where I'm in the business world, but yet I'm still an athlete in mind. And so upon joining all of the dating apps and going to the dating scene, there was never really any app that I joined that had a filter for an athlete or a sports-minded person. So it's kind of where I was always looking to fill a void that was not there. So I kind of started thinking, like, if I had designed a dating app, how would I do it? And fast forward a couple of years, I ended up meeting my wife, and she just so happened to be a sports fan and a tennis player, so it kind of checked all the boxes that I was looking for. But she always would come to me and say, hey, if you would have made this dating app you always talk about, we would have met 5 years sooner. And that really resonated with me, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to push this, and I'm going to create it because I know that there are plenty of other people out there that thought the same as me. Athletes always want to date other athletes just because it's a shared passion. It's not much a hobby. It's a shared passion.
And it's a shared way of life.
Yeah, if you build a relationship on a shared passion, it's that much stronger of a bond. And as well as when you choose to have children or whatnot, you obviously want to push them to or have them go into something that the whole family stands behind. But the foundation of the app, if I'll take you through it a little bit, the whole foundation is, so we have a lady in our company called Dahlia, and she's a 49ers fan, but she lives in Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin, which it's not exactly easy to find a 49ers fan there. So with our app, there's filters that can hone in on other 49er fans that are in her geographical area.
Very
cool.
To
the next slide, please. Yeah, so where does she go to find a date? If maybe there's a 49ers bar that she can go to, that's really the extent of it. No dating app to really get you sorted by the sports team or even if they're a football fan in general. So she wants to have a relationship that's centered around her lifestyle. Next slide. So we say meet the game changer. All of our filters, we consider them game-changing filters. Yes, it's a dating app, and most of the time you are cycling through profiles trying to make it fit. We want to make this a game changer where every filter we have can cater to the person that you're looking to meet, what your ideal person is. And we're calling it the real-life MVP. So you can have a most valuable partner, trying to keep everything in sports-minded and really making this home run of an app focused on sports fans. Next slide. So pretty much basically how it works is this is your front deck. So I don't know if you're familiar with the other dating apps such as Tinder, Bumble, or whatnot. There's a swipe left function in those dating apps. I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I have not dated in a long time.
Well, in those dating apps, there's a swipe left function whether you like the person or not, right. And that you'd have to wait for them to come around to your profile. And if you both have a mutual interest on swiping, you'd go to a direct messaging phase. We have that capability, but we're calling it drafting and passing. So you draft up, trying to keep that sports jargon in there, or you pass down. Yeah, so you would draft everyone that you would like to have on your team or meet. And we also, if you see, there's a Hail Mary button. So it's another sports jargon trying to keep it in the sports family where instead of, like I said, where you would draft someone and hope that your profile ends up going around to them and they draft you back, you can throw a Hail Mary, which would send a direct message to that person saying that you're interested. And it would be almost a direct message, like a text message saying, Keith is interested in you, Dahlia. Would you like to catch the Hail Mary or would you like to pass? If she catches it, we go right into the direct messaging where we can communicate. And if she passes, it sends the direct message back to me saying Dahlia isn't interested. Sorry. And you can keep moving on. But one of the most interesting things is we decided to get a mascot. It's a personality quiz based upon pretty much our 4 demographics of a personality. One of my partners is a psychologist, and he pretty much geared this personality quiz around the 4 personalities of a manager, a scorer, a passer, or a coach. And each personality, you get a little mascot that's located there. And our back-end algorithm is able to match you upon people that best fit your personality in a sports sense. And that is one of our upgraded services. So that's actually where our app is free to download, but there are subscription plans. That's one of the features that is part of the subscription plan. Next slide, please.
What's that? Let's move on to business model and stage of the company. Where are you right now? We understand, I think, what you're trying to do. It's very cool and very interesting. I haven't seen anything like this before, so I think it's probably relatively unique. So talk about what's the situation. Have you launched this?
Yeah, so we're at an exciting time. We are technically on the verge of revenue. So we are pre-revenue. We launched last week. So we're trying to gear up, start talking to investors potentially, just get our pitch deck down, get our pitch finalized. So we launched last week on Apple only, and we have seen an uptick of 700 users since Friday. So we are gaining ground relatively quickly, and that is without actually spending anything on advertisements as of yet. So a little backstory on the advertisement. Facebook launched their own dating app back in September, and it failed miserably. But since that launch of Facebook, they didn't allow any other dating apps to advertise on their platform. They have since pulled back that restriction as of 2 weeks ago. So we are now going through the process of getting our Facebook ad account approved. So that's going to be our first target of marketing, is putting it on the Facebook marketplace. It's the best form of marketing with really your dollar goes a lot further than any other platform. And we really can hone in on geographical locations so we can start small. Because obviously if you go on a dating app and there's no one around you, it's considered a failure. We need to start, say, in the high densely populated areas such as like New York City. Yeah, LA we want to launch in, and Cleveland is another hotspot. We have a lot of it, for whatever reason, during our beta testing and this week alone, we had a lot of Cleveland people sign on. So we realized there's a hotspot in Cleveland. We're going to keep pushing that marketing dollars there. But with COVID, we had to divert our go-to-market strategy because we really were going to have the ground game. We brought on about 35 ambassadors at the big name colleges to really push the college students. That is the easiest demographic to turn on to a dating app. They're used to it already. And since college isn't in session anymore, we had to really change our ground game. And we went to a lot of social media influencers. And we've found now we have 7 athletes that are pushing it on their prospective sport. One being the LFL, the Extreme Football League, that's the Lady Football League. We have a few athletes there, and they're pushing it hard, and that's pretty much where Cleveland has been a hotbed. We also found it big on triathletes, and CrossFit is another those sports athletes that we've been sponsoring to drive home the coverage there.
Keith, I have a couple of inputs on your fundraising.
Sure.
It will be very hard to raise funds for this until you can show some metrics. And that the things, if I put my investor hat on, the things that I'm trying to understand is, what is the business model? Is this a subscription? What is the price of the subscription? At what point? You're saying you're going to launch this as a freemium app. So at what point does it go from free to premium? What is the conversion rate? And what is your user acquisition? And then what is your, how much do you have to spend to acquire users, and what percentage of that converts into paying customers, and does that equation, the unit economics equation, does that work? That's the business that I am investing in if I were to invest in this company. And until you can give me some sense of those metrics, I would not invest in this company.
Yeah, so our business model, it is a freemium. It is free to download, and like I said, the prescription or subscription model, we have 2 tiers, Skybox and Pressbox. So the free version, you would just get your basic filters of sports team or athletic ability. The other filters, as well as video chat, the back-end algorithm that I talked about, those will all be subscriptions. So we start at $9.99 for the middle tier, and the high end is $19.99 subscription-based. From our research going into this with other dating apps and their subscription models, and what we feel is our conversion rate, it's a 5% conversion rate from the free to subscription model. And then the user acquisition question, we haven't put any marketing dollars in there yet, so we're still playing with that number, and we need to we're working to get that number as far as user acquisition or cost per user.
Hang on. This 5%
Sure.
Conversion number is extremely high. Freemium conversion rates, if you're doing 1%, 2%, it's considered a big success. 5% is off the charts higher than industry averages. And all this are your assumptions. If investors would want to see actuals. Tony, what do you think?
I was going to ask, right? So, your fundraising would be a lot more successful, and you won't spend a lot of time doing it once you start collecting data. So I absolutely agree, right? The next couple of months, make sure you identify the data that you want to collect, right? Because that will make your conversations with investors a lot more fruitful, right? You'll get great feedback and you make more interest, right? So absolutely, don't wait to do that. Think about it now. What data you want to collect? I was going to ask the question about subscription, right? Like if you work backwards, you're going to have to generate some big numbers. So for this type of model, right, which is kind of like this two-sided marketplace, right? You got to generate some big user data to come up with, with revenue, right? If there's 1 to 3% conversion, right? So, right. And it's just because there's a lot of competition. Like I like the idea, right? And so people are gonna probably be in a wait and see, right? You'll have a lot of conversations. People will be excited about it, right? Because it's like, yeah, it's unique. I haven't seen anything like this, and it makes sense to have something, that's sports related, right? But ultimately, people will be in a, hey, yeah, when you hit this point, let's talk, or put me on your mailing list, right? So I can keep tabs of your progress, right? So, and that's another thing you should do as well, right? Is as you in the next couple of months, once you start, generating some interesting data, identify investors that you want to talk with, right? And just start having conversations and keep them in the loop. But again, the key thing is going to be you gotta have some data that's going to.
I'm just going to counter a little bit what Tony is saying by saying don't go to investors too soon, because you don't get that many investor meetings. And once an investor rejects you, getting another meeting with that investor takes months. So if you go prematurely to investors, you lose the opportunity to make a strong impression right away that engages them, and you kind of fall off their radar. So it's a cartridge that you should apply very carefully. And the other input I will give you before we move on to the next presenter is I would pick one geography and one sport and try to get critical mass within that. Because if you do flick block here, you know, a little bit of this sport and a little bit of that sport and a little bit of this geography and a little bit of that geography, nothing is going to coagulate. So if you are getting traction in Cleveland, pick Cleveland and pick one sport that is really big in Cleveland and target your activities and customer acquisition, user acquisition into that geography, that sport, and really build critical mass. That's when you're going to see conversions, not by doing flick block here and there.
Yeah,
I completely understand.
And I'll just qualify what I said is, you know, do those activities once you hit the important metrics, right? So if you're selling at $19 a month a subscription, right, it's going to be a while before you get a couple, you know, $5,000, $10,000 a month in revenue, right? So, yeah, so I actually, you know, Samara, I do agree with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so right now, the stage you're in,
a little early.
onset stage, you've just launched the app, and it's, you know, there's no metrics at all. Now is not a good time to talk to investors, so don't blow that cartridge yet.
Yeah, we realize that it is early. We're just trying to, I guess, gather our own, because this is our first time dipping our toe into this type of environment. So getting on calls such as these, getting our business model and everything, like you said, hearing the advice from you is invaluable. And we also want to talk to investors because we're only on the Apple App Store right now, and Android is coming out next month. So we're just kind of crawling at it at this point, getting as much intel as we possibly can, and then building that data that you're talking about. So I really appreciate the feedback. And go ahead.
Very good. All right. If you hang on, I will talk a little bit more about you know, using 1 million by 1 million later in the program after we finish all the investor pitches. So if you want to listen to that, just hang on for a bit, and we can talk more also later.
Okay, perfect.
So thank you, Keith. Brad, you are up next from New York City. Are you on, Brad? Brad Himel?
Hello?
Yes, go on.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. So you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, in 2017, my family was impacted by suicide, and it was pretty traumatic. And simultaneously next to that, one of our co-founders, David Dean, his family was impacted by suicide. And we had both David and I got connected in 2019 late, and he had found that my father survived the suicide attempt and bought my father a ticket to Tony Robbins, who has a seminar called Day with Destiny. And in that seminar, there's a day fully dedicated to suicide prevention. And within 3 hours, my father and I were on stage with Tony Robbins doing an intervention to break through his mental health issues. And David was very touched by that intervention and said, I'm building a mission-based athleisure company. Would you come help me build the company? And I said 100%. And it turned out that the specifics of why this is such a large market is it'll be an $84 billion market by 2026, the activewear space. 27% of Lululemon's growth has come in the last year and a half. And there is no Microsoft to their Apple. There is no one really making a dent or disrupting that the competition, which is Lululemon. So the idea was to build, if we focused on empowering women and built and a community and a database that was specifically for women, we could really make a large disruption in a very large market. And that is our focus, is to almost be a content marketing company that happens to sell activewear. And we've had a very, very big win. One of our other founders is a woman by the name of Alma, who escaped the war in Bosnia, when she was 15 and refuge in Canada, and then moved to Vancouver to go to college when she was 18. And she found that as an athlete that there was not a comfortable athletic wear specifically for women. They were saggy. They didn't make their bodies feel good. So she started in her closet to design yoga pants. And when she was 18, she went to a yoga class in Vancouver, and a gentleman walked up to her and said, "Where did you get those pants?" She said, "I made them." He goes, "I'm Chip Wilson. I'm starting a company called Lululemon. Will you help me design my activewear?" And she said yes. And she was the 5th employee at Lululemon, and heard our story about our mission to empower our women. And she came on board a few months ago. So that's been a big success for us. And we started to launch a crowdfund on Indiegogo, and the idea was to get 2,500 ambassadors / micro influencers. But it started to grow really, really quickly, and we decided to start raising capital to pay for the videography, the websites, the active campaign marketing, everything we needed to launch in Indiegogo. So that's why we're looking for we're hoping to raise $500,000, and we raised $150,000 so far. And that's what the money will go towards, is doing our crowdfund campaign on Indiegogo. So yeah, that's the mission of the company.
So I'm not sure I understand. Have you already launched an Indiegogo campaign on this mission, and it has already raised $150,000?
No, it's kind of awkward. The theme of I'm hearing over and over and over is have traction, have revenue on this webinar, and then go to investors. We're pre-revenue, so we have not launched on any. We haven't launched a pre-sale. We haven't launched in Indiegogo anywhere yet.
So I think I will, reinforce that message again, is that it would be very difficult to get any kind of financing without some traction. And the problem with Indiegogo and Kickstarter and all the crowdfunding platforms is that to see the campaign on one of those platforms, you have to bring your own community that is going to, buy on those platforms first before their community kicks in gear. So if you you have to bring in thousands of your own members who will come and buy your product on those platforms, so that the platform then kicks in gear and brings in more people from that community. So it's very difficult to do a successful crowdfunding campaign if you don't bring to the table a mass of audience yourselves. So if you haven't got that, it's not going to work as a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, we're very well connected to one of the founders of Indiegogo, and the math is really quite simple. 30% of your raise is going to come in the first few days, meaning so you have to have a database big enough heading into the campaign. Yeah, so if we want to do like $10 million, for example, on the crowdfund, we would need 250,000 people in our database, because 5% of those are going to be purchasers at an average purchase price of $165. That will get us to 3 million in the first few days, and then Indiegogo's 11 million person database supports the rest of the crowdfund, as an example. So yeah,
the question that you need to address is not these questions. These questions don't get you anywhere. You need to ask the question: how are you going to get that first database together of women or people that will invest in your business, or pre-order products from you on an Indiegogo to do what you're trying to do to meet that early campaign adoption requirement of Indiegogo, so that their community then kicks in gear. So that's really your fundamental question: is can you, through friends and family or some other way, can you pull together the resources you need to get that part of the equation done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we wanted to get to 250,000, so we contacted 2,500 women who believed that they could at least get 100 people into our database, and we got to 100 out of 2,500 ambassadors, is what we're calling them, really, really quickly. But we need to invest in the technology to keep them engaged, the marketing to keep them engaged, the videos, and all the content to keep them engaged. So yeah, we within 2 weeks we were able to get to 100 people that believe they could get 100 people involved in our community.
So at your stage, the only kind of fundraising that is possible is friends and family. There is no other way to finance the stage. Tony, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? Because at some point you need to, and we've invested in I mentioned at the beginning of the call, in Zena Workwear, right, which is selling shoes to women in STEM and manufacturing, right? And so the key is to be able to put together all the pieces that you need, right? So to be able to, find the resources to be able to create a prototype, right, cheaply, and start getting your initial product out to people, right? Because that's one way to build interest, right? And right, I think that's going to come by just getting friends and family, small rounds, and got to be efficient to do that, right? With like $30,000, can you build a prototype and get 100 products out there, right, to people? Because I think the concern.
Oh, that, and also get the database together so you can launch a crowdfunding campaign. So all of that needs to happen within a very, very small amount of friends and family rounds. So I think your next action item is, Brad, to pull together a small friends and family round with which you can meet those criteria of your prototyping and the database building with which you can, and keeping that database engaged, create the content and everything with which to run a crowdfunding campaign. So that's your immediate next step.
Yeah, we've, like I said, raised 150 for friends and family. So yeah, we can continue down that path.
Okay, good. All right, Brad, thank you for your presentation. We're going to Latifa Nassoro from Malaysia. Latifa, are you on the call? Please unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, so hi everyone.
Hello.
So today I'll be presenting the best menu. I'm pretty sure everybody likes food here, right?
Sure.
Okay, so I came up with this idea, the best menu, because I don't just like food, but I like to cook as well. I started cooking when I was 12 years old, because I'm from actually Tanzania and not Malaysia. I study and work in Malaysia, but originally I'm from Tanzania. So in my culture, we really appreciate food. And for us, we eat food. We eat it for pleasure and actually not satisfaction. So that's how we say it. So in Malaysia currently, they have the movement control order. And the movement control order is basically caused because of COVID-19. So at the moment, restaurants are facing a lot of challenges, and it's something that I've been seeing almost every day on the newspapers, because I kind of do my external research as well, so that I can actually see if my idea will work. So currently, the pandemic has destroyed the food supply chain here in Malaysia, because Malaysia is a Muslim country, so when it comes to food, they actually follow the halal process procedures. So that, in a way, affects the supply chain. And at the same time, poultry and meat products are actually running out here in Malaysia, because most companies are failing to meet with the halal procedures. And also, like a lot of imported, even vegetables imported in the country are expensive. and not just the imported, even the local produced ones are like the price is increasing. Okay, and also restaurants are being given like strict regulation in terms of hygiene, so it affects its time and management because they don't distribute a lot of time when it comes to actually making their menu because they have to focus on registering customer information, and at the same time they have to clean, and also their operating hours, they're not allowed to operate for like full day. They have limited hours to operate. And at the same time, most of the in our Malaysian culture, almost like 70% of customers eat outside. But at the moment, like customers are actually afraid to go to restaurants because they're afraid it could be crowded.
Right.
So this is really affecting the restaurant sales and most of the profit. And some restaurants are actually closed. I live in an area where like there's plenty of restaurants, and at the moment there's just like one restaurant open. Most of the restaurants are closed. And yeah, so basically the idea of creating the menu, in my perspective, I believe it will form like a lot of opportunities because creating the best menu, for instance, like I explained previously, the supply chain is affected, imported vegetables are becoming expensive. So my idea was actually to create the best menu by using the locally produced product. And at the same time, due to like rumors that actually COVID-19 comes from animals, so it's like basically a virus that's transferred from animals to humans. So I believe that we can actually substitute these things and go more towards like vegetarian-based food products. And at the same time, if we have a menu that is quick and easy to prepare, it will be more efficient for restaurants, so they can actually be able to multitask in terms of restaurants maintaining the hygiene of the restaurant, in terms of the operation as well.
Can I interrupt you and ask a question? What are you suggesting you want to do? You want to work with restaurants and help each restaurant create a customized best menu for themselves that they will then sell online for pickup or delivery? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like I want to work with restaurants like to create the best menu that will allow them to multitask in terms of time management, and at the same time to create a menu. The same menu can be used online as well. So to give customers that online experience, because most customers are actually afraid to go to these restaurants. So
right. Right now, nobody is going to restaurants, and restaurants, even if they open up, are not very crowded. They're operating at very low capacity, very low percentage. So let's understand what is the business model. Well, how are you going to charge these restaurants to do what you're proposing to do?
Okay. So this idea I created this idea recently because of the COVID-19, but I also have like friends who are actually running their own restaurants. So when I interviewed some of my friends who they have closed their restaurant at the moment. So when I asked them about the menu, and then some of them are like, okay, so the menus, some restaurants would prefer to change menu like quarterly, and some restaurants actually have fixed menus. So it depends. The price also can depend because it also depends what you want in your menu.
No, that's not my question. My question is, what is your business model? How are you going to make money? This is a business that you're starting. How are you going to get money? Are you getting consulting fees from the restaurant? Is that your business model?
Like I want to create the menu by working together.
But how are you going to get compensated for providing that service to restaurants? You don't want to do this for free, right?
No. I'll be compensated. Like for instance, like when I mentioned about the supply chain and there is like lack of meat and all that, so I will be compensated by substituting this stuff that are usually imported or stuff that are lacking in terms.
I don't think you understand what is the concept of a business model. A business model is when you have a customer and you provide a service or a product to the customer, and the customer pays you in some format. Is it a subscription? Is it a consulting fee, one-time fee, a monthly fee, whatever is the business, that's called a business model. And you need a business model. Think it through. You're very early in your development, in your concept development. I don't think there's any point spending too much more time on it. I understand what you want to do, but you need to understand how you're going to monetize this business. What is the business model that allows you to do this business? Okay? That's your immediate next step, figuring out what is the business model. Go ask your friends that if you did this for them, how much are they willing to pay you to do so?
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. All right, folks, that concludes the investor pitches, the entrepreneur pitches, sorry. If you like what we're doing here, as you can see, I'm pretty direct with feedback on what will work and what will not work. And if you have entrepreneurs in your network, your friends, family, colleagues, whoever wants to be an entrepreneur or is already an entrepreneur and is looking for help, refer them to 1Mby1M if they're interested in direct constructive feedback and a whole lot of resources that come with the 1Mby1M program. And they are all at 1Mby1M.com. There is a blog that is free. You can access it abundantly, and especially it has all our case studies available for free, something that we always encourage you to start looking at. You learn a lot from following the blog, especially the case studies. We also have published a book series based on the Entrepreneur Journeys case studies, and there are 12 volumes of those books. You can learn from them as well. They're all available digitally on Amazon. These roundtables happen every week. This is the 486th roundtable. Over 150,000 people have attended. They just keep coming back to them or just listen to the recordings. You will learn a lot from that as well. Among other things, those who have attended today, you learned the fact that trying to go raise money without metrics is basically a wastage of time. And that's valuable input because investors do not like to see non-metric projects. So you're going to completely waste your time if you go chasing investors without metrics. Our full acceleration program is 1M Premium, and that's a $1,000 annual membership fee program for extensive methodology guidance. We have a full digital curriculum. We help you with business development. We help you with strategy consulting and similar sessions like these that are private for our members only. We help you with financing. We help you with getting the word out there through our clout in the media. If you're working on a concept, use the 1M self-assessment to test if you've got your strategic pieces right. These are questions that investors would ask you. You should ask these questions of yourself. The questionnaire is available on the website under 1M self-assessment. If you get stuck in trying to answer these questions and you don't understand what all this is about, do the curriculum. And you can access the curriculum through 1M Basic. That's our curriculum-only option. It's only $99 a month. Just study. Invest, 50, 100 hours studying the methodology, and you will come out way ahead in understanding how to navigate your journey. So dig around on the website, see, whether this program is for you or not. Look at the FAQs, the video FAQs, the curriculum description. It is a case study-based curriculum. We have over 100 unicorn entrepreneur case studies, 400 plus venture-funded case studies, and another 400 plus bootstrap case studies. The entire curriculum is built on case studies. So you get to stand on the shoulders of people who have done it before and who are generously teaching you what they have learned. It's incredibly effective. As we talked about earlier with Tony, our methodology is lean, capital efficient, bootstrap startups. The philosophy is bootstrap first, raise money later with metrics. That's it. We have roundtables coming up pretty much every week, May 28th, and then June 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th. We also have online rendezvous on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, and Twitter video live. So those are on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m. Pacific, May 26th, and then June 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th. You can catch me on any of these sessions, and happy to interact further. If you have questions today, now is the time to either ask your questions in the public chat or call in. These are the dial-in instructions. Please feel free to call in if you have more questions. And in the meantime, let me also introduce you to Irina Patterson on our team, who will answer any questions you might have on the 1M1M program. Folks, questions. Do you have any questions? Anybody? Questions, comments?
Hello?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, so besides the business model, like what else do you think I can improve?
Well, you're at the very beginning of how to build a business. What I sense is that you have not done this before. You've never built a business before, right?
Yeah, no.
So I think, you should do 1M1M basic, and at least do it for a month and put in about 50 hours or maybe more to study how to build a business. There's a whole lot of stuff that you need to learn, and it's the most efficient way I can recommend that you will learn that is by doing the curriculum and learning the methodology.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Yes.
You're very welcome. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Great session.
Sorry?
It was a great session.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you found it useful. Anybody else? Folks, we are here every week, and you can participate from anywhere in the world. So come ask your questions, use the resources to learn online, and no matter where you are, the methodology is very similar. The networks are different. The investors we would send you to vary. The customers potentially we would introduce you to may vary. But the methodology of building businesses is not so different from one geography to another. So it's a universal methodology of business building that's focused on fundamentals, that's focused on bootstrapping. Okay, folks, I don't see any more questions, so we're going to adjourn for today. Here's a question that I got privately. Please don't ask me private questions. Let's share the questions with everybody. Harish Ramachandriya is asking, wanted to check, how do you protect the IP of the case you are presenting? We don't protect any IP. This is a public session, and everything is available on our YouTube channel publicly. We set those expectations ahead of time. If you choose to present in these public sessions, there is no IP protection on what you have presented. Does that answer your question, Harish? All right, folks, I don't see any other questions. So last call, if you have a question, I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, we are adjourning the session. Thank you for coming today. I hope to see you next week and in any of the future sessions. And there are many other touch points through which you can interact with us. The best one is actually the blog. There's a tremendous amount of information on the blog. If you start really immersing yourself in the blog, especially in the case studies, you will learn a lot, and it will help you tremendously in navigating your journey. So good luck, stay safe, and for those of you who are in Eastern India or in Bangladesh who are affected by the Amphan cyclone, I'm really, really sorry, and I hope you're staying safe. My family is in Kolkata, which is absolutely devastated right now. So very, very traumatic situation there. Everywhere, people, please stay safe, and we will see you soon. Bye. Thanks for coming today.